and welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Today we are thrilled to have Telojo Valerie Onu, originally from St. Vincent and the Grenadines but based in St. Kitts and Nevis. Telly is a well-known and well-regarded consultant and entrepreneur in the Caribbean region and a champion for entrepreneurship and innovation. She is the managing director and principal consultant of Quintessence Consulting, her own little baby. I think it's about 18 years and going strong. The managing director of the Powerhouse Group, which specializes in the development of innovative financial technology solutions, seed and early stage investment in fintech startups, and the co-founder of Beyond Capital Markets. She's also advising several organizations on fintech and blockchain technology, and her list of achievements goes on. Telly, I don't know where you get the energy. I'm even getting a little tired and out of breath reading all of this. And, just the time to do all that you do. So thank you so much for agreeing to spend some time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
With all of those achievements, I just feel as if we probably just need to start, try and go back to the beginning. So, here it is that you've been working in technology, ICT, fintech, blockchain, etc. Were you technically inclined?
Well, I would say my exposure to technology that led to my passion for technology and innovation would have started really early in my life. I remember my late brother, when I was at age 3, Pedro was like 20 years older than me. So, 3-year-old, and I doted Pedro. And Pedro, at the time, he's like into gadgets and stuff. So he taught me how to program video games. And
Nice.
We kept on programming all sorts of video games. So I got introduced to tech real early, and it was introduced from the perspective of gaming.
Okay.
And it was fun and so on and so forth. So I'd always loved that. And then the other thing I also loved was machinery. Yes, I had dolls, but my favorite were trains. For whatever reason, I love trains. I love to dismantle and whatever. And my parents allowed me to do that, and explore.
You have been the principal consultant and managing director of Quintessence Consulting, and I gather for primarily most of your adult life, probably almost 20 years now.
Yes.
So, and I guess, although I would suspect that to varying degrees, you would have, had jobs along the way. There comes a point when you decide to step out on your own and do this full time. And I wonder about just risk and how what was your appetite for risk?
Oof. I think for me, yes, I have been doing this for many, many years. Even right through school, every time I did something part-time, I would have started Quintessence part-time, doing things for people. I think early on, I realized I had the knack for helping people solve problems, complex problems, technology problems. So I would have done, back in the early days, it was more me leveraging my creative side. So, whether it was doing some publishing, desktop publishing, or it was even back in the early, I used to do websites. Or one of the things that I really loved were setting people's databases and so on, CRM. So I think early I found I had this knack for problem solving, both on the tech side and on the business side. So for me, it was really a mode of expression. When I would do this type of work, I derived a great sense of satisfaction, especially when you are working with a company or an entrepreneur and you solve the problem and you see them really happy for the change and it makes a difference. Creating impact is something that I think is passionate. So quite early, it was really a marriage of innovation, technology, and development. I've always had the passion for that, and making sure that there is, an end result that actually creates an impact. So for me, risk taking, I've always been a risk taker as early as I can remember. I remember as a teenager always selling things. I remember when my parents would give me an allowance, like three quarters of that allowance would be scanning the market and going to buy things to sell. But, and I remember always just stacking my money. I wish I had the same kind of ethics that I have now than now. But I used to be the money hoard. I always had money because I was selling things.
Oh,
So I
wonderful.
always saw opportunities in transforming stuff. And I
Yes.
think I enjoyed it really early. So sales had always been sales and marketing were things I just that naturally were a part of me. The risk, I can tell you this, entrepreneurship is not an easy street
Yes.
and it does have its own cycles. In my case, I think uh, having the experience of even working in government for a short while, I realized, yes, I could work for someone. I don't have an issue. It's just that I never felt the sense of freedom. And I think the biggest part is that because I like to create things, I like to come up with new solutions and do things differently. I found in those environments I was very restricted. And to me, it
Yes.
felt like death. It's like killing me slowly. And I thought, I can't live like this. Why I pick consulting? I guess, back early when you're young, you're not really sure what you're doing or even what it's called. But, really early, I'm like, I like helping people with their issues and doing stuff for people. What is that? And, unfortunately, it wasn't like we had such a big environment to teach us about business models and so on. So thank God I came in an era, where we had internet, the .com. I was one of the early adopters. So
Yes.
even back then with the very slow internet, I would go online and search for things. It's like a massive library for me. So a lot of the things I would have done, especially in tech, were self-taught, really, to be honest. And just out of experience and application, after a while, you really learn it. And eventually, I then had to then ensure, even though I was self-taught in a lot of these things, I sought out to make sure I matched my experience with going after, education or certification programs to ensure that my competence was at it. Because then I realized I am in the business of knowledge. I'm in the business of application of knowledge. So I myself had to build up myself in order to build up the practice as a boutique firm.
No,
So
absolutely. And that's an excellent point you raise about just education. And I think more so in today's world where we continually have to develop our skills and being prepared, especially if you probably find that maybe as a consultant, people are asking for certain types of skills, certain types of expertise. And yes, you may have it, but it might be good to sort of formalize it, get a certificate if possible, which is a demonstration of your knowledge and your expertise as well.
correct. And then also because of the model, I mean, I looked at the early days at who were the role models in these consulting in a consulting business. I looked at independent consultants. I looked at the big firms. I spent hours studying their model, and I realized, okay, in order to build your boutique firm, you yourself as the senior expert have to have not only years of expertise, but you have to have different type of qualifications. And I remember back then saying, "Oh my God, what am I getting myself into?" And so I wrote down my plan, I mapped it out, and I said, I'm giving myself, 10, 15 years to get to the very top.
Yes.
And I want to be known as an international specialist. But then I also recognize too that a lot of these consultants are multidisciplinary and they don't focus just on one area. They probably build their competence in 3 to 4 areas. So again, I always looked at also how do I differentiate myself from them? Because I'm coming from the region, really small. I need to have areas that I could focus in. And so by leveraging my passion for technology, for innovation, and doing things differently, I think too, back in the earlys, I was always ahead of the game. I was doing e-business before people knew what the hell e-business was.
Yeah.
And, I moved into study e-governance, and people are like, what the hell is that? Is that e-government? I'm like, no, no, no. It's multi-stakeholder complex problem solving with technology. And now with everyone, the buzz of blockchain, I'm far ahead of them because, my training has prepared me for decentralized networks. And I've learned also over the years to not be too comfortable. So yes, I might achieve product market fit for a particular service and it's doing really well. It's easy to get comfortable because now it reminds you of being in a stable, job and there's stable money coming in. But then fairly quickly, if you read the book Who Moved My Cheese,
Yes,
if you're
yes, I
not
have.
watching the landscape, you would eventually, I don't want to ever be in a position to say who moved my cheese. One of the things I've done to de-risk would have been to kind of focus on more than one area. So while I might have a pillar, a component in technology, I also have a component for private sector development, another component, in climate innovation and so on and so forth. So initially in the beginning, of course, it was really to acquire a lot of knowledge and to build my portfolio. But then now I recognize I've done it all. I'm tired. But the important thing is the company needs to build its own brand and everything should be about the company. So again, it's now, in the early years, you move from being self-employed to now creating business systems to employ others. And that's part of that growth trajectory. So it doesn't happen overnight. And some people who are not into business seem to think, big businesses just bloom overnight. It takes a while to build the systems and so on and so forth for you to now, build that. And then also big thing is like networking.
No, definitely.
Early years, you spend as much time doing the networking. You never know. They say your network is your net worth. It really is because you never know where the leads will come from. These are people you have sown very good seeds and goodwill. They always remember you, and people move.
And yes, and oftentimes what then happens is that they just reach out to you directly to find out whether or not you might be able to help them based on a conversation that you all had, 4 years ago or something like that.
Yeah,
So, and referral is, one of the best ways, to get business if possible.
trust me. Referral and word of mouth. It's like there's nothing like that, and you have to find ways of building that as part of your pipeline or your strategy.
Definitely. You had said that early on in terms of, entrepreneurship not being an easy street, and I'm sure based on yours and of the experience of many others who have gone before, there's nothing like being an overnight success. So I was wondering whether or not there was a point where you thought about giving up. Was there like a pivotal moment where you had to say, what am I doing? Should I continue along this path or find something else?
I like the word you use, pivotal moment. I don't think there was ever one pivotal moment. I think there were many pivotal moments that you're like, what am I doing? Or you feel like giving up. Yeah, there have been several pivotal moments. And I have also experienced when I ever get to those moments, it actually allows me to kind of reassess,
Yes.
re-strategize, and come up with a plan. So again, I think I would have mentioned about this whole concept of being too comfortable.
Yes.
Business is very dynamic. Market is dynamic. It changes very quickly, real time, overnight. It could really change based on different external factors, even internal factors. It could even be, a decision you made for entry into a strategic alliance that perhaps didn't work out. and then perhaps you spent too much time on the strategic alliance, you neglected some of the other portfolio,
Yes.
of your services. Many different things happen. So I would say at each of those pivotal moments, I had to consider, do I change, tweak? I had to look again at what I was doing, look at the model, see what could be tweaked, and be honest with myself. If there is a sector that is dead, leave it and pivot. So using that word pivotal, pivot. So even I'm at that stage where Quintessence itself it's 18 years old. And trust me, she has a portfolio of projects that I even look at and go, wow, we did all of this. But then I also have to be real in terms of assessing the model, the target markets, and the changes to the environment, and be realistic. Some of these services I'm offering, are they going to be there in the next 5 to 10 years? We have this new type of technologies coming up with artificial intelligence and so on. How is that going to impact some of these services? I think the good thing I have going is that apart from being a management consultant, I'm also an IT specialist and consultant. So I have found, actually, to be honest, that in the last 2 years, where the market is truly heading has really been digital transformation.
Yes, yes.
Business needs technology to transform. So definitely digital transformation is big, but that again, you have a challenge in our region in terms of adoption. We're not necessarily known for early adoption. We tend to be a bit risk averse. Yes, we import technology, but we want technology that's been proven for 10, 15 years before you use it. And so it becomes a challenge where when I wear my other hat in terms of helping build the ecosystem for entrepreneurship, where you have new innovations, we in the region being creators now and developing new products and services, we do need these companies to try and test them and adopt them. And it becomes a challenge because naturally as a region, we tend to be risk averse.
And that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
You are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're a consultant. But the point I want to highlight is the fact that you're a woman in business and a woman in technology. And I just want to get your thoughts and some of your experience as a female business owner and a woman in technology in the region. What has that been like for you?
Okay, so when I started out launching my business, I never ever for once thought about my gender as being a factor. Over the years, as I would do my stuff and grow, I would have had quite a number of gender, should I say, references or inferences when you were doing work. So first, as a management consultant, the experiences I have had in terms of gender bias would have really sort of come from persons when you're going to pitch your business or you're going to see a new client and doing client acquisition. First of all, I think the issue I had back then was I'm young, my
Okay.
youth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was so much of my gender at the time. I think I struggle with the fact, the bias of me being young. You're offering consulting services in the heads. Consultants supposed to have so much experience. You need to be 60 years old. And here I was in my early 20s and so on, doing significant stuff. When I would, send my CV again, remember I'm, 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 I'm trying to be competitive because I'm also running a cross-border service here
Yes.
online. So I could have anyone come from anywhere in the world. So I would tailor. I looked back then and see how does an EU consultant do? How does a World Bank consultant? What do they do? What do I need to aspire to? So of course my CV, I would use those as CVs. Where in the region you send someone the CV and they think you're padding it. So I had those instances there where they would refer that you're padding it or you don't have enough experience, and when you send information on the experience, they don't believe you. So early on, it was more youth. And then I started to get kind of mid 20s, late 30s. I started to get a lot of references about me being female and who did I sleep with to get a contract. I think because I would always apply for contracts based on my experience and my merit, and I'll get it based on merit. It never even crossed my mind that even these things exist. I hear people tell me in the workplace this happened and that happened, but I never would have thought it would cross over, in the industry.
Yes.
I've had one or two incidences where it was really definitely gender biased, but then more or less from the management consulting side, it hasn't been as bad. Now, crossover female in tech, that's a whole nother ball game. Honestly, and this is why, to me, back in the day, when people would say women only programs, I would scoff and go, why do women need women only programs? But here I am, an entrepreneur teaching and rolling out women acceleration programs that's implemented through the World Bank, because I have now experienced the challenges and seen the differences between women and men.
Yes.
Men naturally are socialized. They're socialized differently. They tend to have their own networks, and the networks prop them up.
Understood, yes.
Women are socialized totally differently. We don't necessarily have the same networks, and the effects are not necessarily the same. We have other programming issues. If you're programmed to, you're told as a child you need not to talk too much. You need to be seen, not heard, and those type of things. That's the kind of subconscious thing that can actually prevent you from moving forward. You find we don't have enough confidence. We tend to be timid. We're naturally nurturing.
Yes.
So we tend to now put the nurturing side into the business. I might not necessarily have that clear business head to be objective. When it comes to finance, look at it. I was talking to someone else. The figures are daunting. Women are not getting as much finance as they should, and because they're not asking enough. And I've had to even think about myself, when you have an opportunity and you want to get the contract. One of the things you do is try and sell yourself short. Long time ago, I used to do that. I used to I definitely wanted to get it. It's a big deal. So I'm actually going to offer my services for 3/4 of the price. I mean, that is damning, I am now diminishing my value. So being aware is one of the things that will then help you start to address these things, spend a lot of time doing personal development and improving oneself, and just kind of reprogramming the mindset. It's really key. So yeah, there are differences. Gender bias with technology is greater. I would not lie to you. Technology in itself, the industry tends to be very male dominated. And I do believe, it's not all the time, but in majority of cases, males feel threatened when they see women in this space. And as a reaction to that threat or response, they tend to be very misogynistic. I have experienced that and that. I've experienced it even with trying to get contracts. How come I'm being made to jump through 1,000,001 hoops? And I will bring a male counterpart that doesn't have as much experience as I do, or even the training that I have. And he don't have to do anything. He just needs to go up and talk. No one questions. No one questions his expertise. Not one. How many times I've had to literally pull out this CV and drop it like a book. And I'm like, why do I have to do that? For what reason? I don't need to prove this to anyone. But my male counterpart have it much easier. And I've done a number of tests to see it. It really is a problem. It's not all males, because we do have some fantastic male counterparts in our space that really work well. But there is an issue with some gender bias. Also, as women, we don't tend to make ourselves visible. We don't promote ourselves. Again, coming from the culture of, you can be quiet. You don't want to stir up in case people say, who does she think she is? That sort of thing. But it's important that we actually make ourselves visible, because young girls coming up need to see female role models. That's why they're not getting into tech. They're not seeing enough people like them to say, oh, this is a viable career.
So, based on this, all of your experience, and you're currently based in St. Kitts,
Correct.
what is the entrepreneurship landscape like? And do you see, a lot of support for tech entrepreneurship and innovation there?
So St. Kitts and Nevis, well, while it's small, the ecosystem is growing. We have seen quite a number of entrepreneurs in the space that are very, very active. It definitely needs more support in terms of getting them out there and getting them to also foster strategic alliances. But I can tell you, it's like now young people see it as a viable option, where before, you might have one or two people try a thing, but they don't really see it as, a thing. But now it's tech as well as creative services, I think, is one of the big industries that can really help transform some of the regions.
Just before we begin to wrap up, I just wanted to touch on blockchain technology, and that's an area that you've been quite involved in, advising a number of clients, on fintech as well and initial coin offerings. And I even noted that you were recently quoted in Forbes. I mean, congratulations on that.
Ah, 3 articles, yes.
Fantastic.
I saw the first one. I said, oh, and then I saw the other two. I was like, oh no, couldn't be.
Yeah, congratulations, because clearly just
So we're
just
out
that
there. We're out
platform.
there.
hmm
Pressure.
I have no doubt. So, I mean, blockchain and cryptocurrencies, generally, I think they still consider that they're in their infancy. What do you sense the
Yes.
future holds there?
Well, infancy from the perspective of use cases. When Bitcoin launched late 2008, 2009, it's now been a number of years. So it's not really on the technology side of the native protocol. They're not necessarily that young yet.
Yes.
Still some evolution in terms of efficiency that needs to happen. But from the application and use case, yes, I would say there are a number of early adopters. The future of blockchain is pretty bright. Yes, at the moment, I must say, with the cryptocurrencies and what's going on with initial coin offerings and so on, naturally, where you have any new innovation, it's going to attract everybody, especially where you have a new way of funding. It's
Yes.
going to attract all sorts. So naturally, we do have a high number, as what we would call, they say around 90% of those initial coin offerings are not necessarily realistic businesses, because the model, you have an idea, you put your team together, if you have the money, resources. Some people pay up to 300,000, 400,000 to launch their ICO, and they raise money. But what I see, the market is starting to correct itself. People who are now getting in are starting to be getting more educated to understand that at the end of the day, we're talking about businesses and sustainable businesses. And the same lessons we learned with the dot-com era is you have to have proper business models. You have to have proper customer acquisition channels. You have to have product market and, all the things about ethics in business. So we're starting to see institutional investors coming into the space,
Mm-hmm.
and they themselves have their own perspective of what they're looking for, of more sustainable businesses that have traction. They look at the team. There are many different, criteria, but also the people who are in the space who are buying the cryptos, they're starting to become savvy, what I would call retail investors. So that is to say, we see more opportunities in companies offering training capacity building for both retail and institutional investors alike, because it is different. To copy it and say it's like the stock market, it is not true, because the whole model is different. It leverages what we call network economics, meaning network effects. The more you add onto the network, it increases the value. So it doesn't necessarily act like a stock, you know?
Yes.
And then even beyond the whole ecosystem and cryptocurrencies itself, blockchain technology holds a lot of potential because of the nature of the distributed ledger. It's a ledger which allows you now to organize all sorts of things. So I see it like in financial services. We see it being used for like collateral registries, all sorts of registries could go on it. When you think about in government, things like land registries, far less in health. I think in health, it really is going to be transformative because now you have the ability for people to, or individuals to kind of keep their content and keep their health data.
Yes.
So some health data portability. So we are, as we see, to see now is an interest in industries in the different use cases. You're seeing a lot of pilots. You have even the International Donor Agency supporting it because they also see benefits. It improves from a governance perspective. It increases efficiency. It could increase efficiency depending on design. It facilitates transparency, obviously, and for the most part, it helps reorganize organizations. It's all about organizing a a decentralized world. Where you have everyone scattered all over the place. We've always had challenges in how do we organize all these people. Now you have an opportunity to use programmable code at the end of the day to organize all these people. But what it also shows is that data is the new oil. Long term, it's hard to say where it's going to be, but definitely it's here to stay. I do believe there will be a lot more use cases, practical use cases, and tokens will just become one of those things. It does help also fast track digital transformation and digital development. Where it might be a concern is, we're still trying to address the digital divide in different countries, especially our
Yes.
emerging markets. And so maybe that divide might be greater and faster because of the nature. It really speeds up a lot of this developmental issue. So you might have a digital divide growing. Hence why it's important to also encourage more use cases that look at impact, innovation impact. So that's one of the areas of our new firm, Beyond Capital Markets, is looking at.
And I guess just the last question, what are the two or three things you think the Caribbean should be doing to better position itself for the future of tech, such as with respect to fintech, blockchain, and/or cryptocurrencies?
Mhm. Well, for the most part, I can tell you we spend a lot of time talking and not doing and executing. For fintech, there are many aspects of fintech, but if we're looking at payment, we have to get serious and allow for the implementation of backbones that can facilitate electronic payments. E-commerce hasn't taken off in the region. We're still far behind. Why? Because unfortunately, policymakers and the people that were there never saw, never understood what it takes to, implement that. So I think greater private-public arrangements or multi-stakeholder arrangements are definitely needed. Region coming out of our history, governments tend to do everything for us. And the reality is that now you have innovations that can produce the same kind of transformative impact, and of course enabling organizations like accelerators, incubators, and so on that can help foster new type of innovation. So I think we should stop giving lip service to innovation and really allowing should I say, better policies in the space of innovation. So that's more on the macro side. We do need innovation policies across the board. I think so far people talk about business policies, small business policies, and then now they're talking about entrepreneurship policy. But if you have an innovation policy, all those other policies will fall under. So I think that's one thing I would say for Caribbean policymakers to look at. And also start to trust the private sector. And I go to many different events and they say, oh, well, our private sector is risk averse, blah, blah. But then the private sector is diverse. You have different types of private sector. Have you looked at the youth? Because when you look at the youth, they have so much innovations. And me coming from being a youth growing a business, I know the kind of discrimination. It is rough. But when you look at the youth of today, they do have the solution. So they need to have a voice and they need to be respected for their voice and allowed to pilot some of their innovations and not laughed at and looked at. So
Yes.
that's another thing. More youth involvement and giving them a greater voice. When it comes to fintech, I think more awareness. I think people just need to be aware. Companies also need to be aware of how fintech can be used to improve them. I think when you're looking at fintech in banking, banks tend to be very risk averse.
Mm-hmm.
And then they want to control it. Again, this whole I control it. I think them recognizing that they themselves are in a competitive space and
Yes.
they can partner with fintech companies to launch new products is something that is best practice, and they should really start to see how they can engage in strategic alliances with fintech companies. And under fintech, you have many different subtechs. You have, for those in the offshore industry, there's wealth tech that helps focus wealth management, etc. Then, then insurance, I think, is a very, very open space. I think it really has significant opportunity for transformation because insurance hasn't changed for many, many years. The new models now, insurtech is really powerful and growing. So for insurance providers, I also urge them to seek out fintech companies that they can partner with and also
Yes.
support innovation. So these, for those big institutions we have in our regions, you're talking about our telecom companies, our insurance companies, banks, financial institutions, etc., what we would consider enterprises, large enterprises, they need to pay it forward and support innovations that will also help them transform. So partnering to foster corporate innovation is key, and also supporting initiatives like, hackathons and all sorts of development labs is quite important. Well, now last, for blockchain and cryptocurrency, I think the first thing people need to do is try and find out, be aware of what blockchain is, what cryptocurrency is. Blockchain, when we talk about blockchain cryptocurrency, we're not just talking Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is just but one example of a use case of how you use cryptocurrency. It's a very narrow use case. It's only for payments or right now Bitcoin itself is functioning like gold at the moment, like a store of value. So
Yes.
it's just
Yes.
one use case, but we have so many use cases. We have a company out of St. Lucia from Zai that's using AI, and they're going to be using the blockchain for verification, ID verification. Can you imagine? One of the big issues is forecasting and planning for our agriculture in the region.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have the opportunity to do that because they'll be gathering all these data. They can even work along with insurance companies and create new index insurance products. So that's going to be really big. You have a company right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. One might say retail. I would put her in the class of agro processor because she does value added, but she does farm to table, food farm to table, and from farm to body skincare products, and especially her cosmetic line. She's creating a whole new brand, and she's leveraging AI as well as blockchain to kind of capture changes in your skin because she's doing skincare products. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different applications, and I have my company also, so which working hard on looking at implementing an interoperability platform. You have Bit out of Barbados. They've raised so much money, and they're right now working on a pilot with our central bank here for a digital currency. So, blockchain is here to stay, and we're going to start seeing companies. A company out of Bermuda, wireless internet, the issues we have with internet infrastructure in our region. And Horizon has been able to raise quite a lot to help launch their wireless internet services. So we do have use cases in the region, and I believe there will be more coming. And these are companies that have been working really hard to build traction. It's still a young space when it comes to innovation, but guess what? People are coming into our space because for most of the countries that offer international financial centers traditionally. It's a perfect infrastructure for you to launch an ICO. We already have different features like Foundations Act, Limited Partnership Acts, and so on for you to create new things. So people are coming into our ecosystem. So one of the things I can urge for entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, innovators, blockchain is not the only solution, and blockchain is not going to be the only thing that you can do to help propel you. But for those that can find a use case or would benefit from adopting, say, a network model or even an aspect of blockchain for currency or whatever, then why not? Because it will give us a competitive edge. People are already coming into our space to register and incorporate because we already have, I would say, the infrastructure that Switzerland so far has had that crypto valley feel, but I think we actually have much more, especially in the Eastern Caribbean, as we have a number of the different countries offering these financial service products. We hope that the adoption for these innovations will be greater. Yes, right now it might seem like the wild, wild west. Education is the only thing that can help in terms of understanding what the industry is. It's very complex, but again, it's an economy. It's a new economy, and we have seen this economy generate about 40 different new types of jobs. So for young people who want to get in, if they don't necessarily have to even be tech savvy, they could be in marketing, their social media, and so on. There's so many jobs out there being created through the crypto economy. So this allows us to even engage in e-commerce, information type e-commerce, without us necessarily having to do trading goods, if you know what I mean. So trading services is a big opportunity. So my last word is take it with a pinch of salt. Make sure you read, educate yourself, and don't jump in. A lot of people will jump in because they see Bitcoin went to 15,000 and they're jumping in without knowing or understanding what this industry is about and what the business model is about.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much for that, Telly. This has been just such an enlightening conversation, and I'm just so thrilled again to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.